Welcome back and thanks for staying up with us. This month marks 1 year since this horrible scene in the parking lot of a Walmart. 39 undocumented immigrants found inside a hot trailer, 10 of them dead. Tonight, the community came together to remember the lives lost and the 29 survivors. Eyewitness News reporter Henry Ramos was at tonight's vigil and joins us in studio with the message from the organizers of the event. Good evening, Henry.
Good evening, Phil. Well, this has been one of the busiest summers for Raíces, to say the least. And tonight, the Immigration Legal Services, along with several community leaders like Congressman Joaquin Castro, put their work on pause to remember the 10 people who were just looking for a better tomorrow. A time of reflection.
They're not numbers. These are individuals. These are human beings.
Tonight, 10 candles and white roses symbolizing the lives lost inside this tractor trailer in late July last year.
They were trying to reach their families, trying to escape from violence, trying to find a better life here in the United States.
The nonprofit Raíces organizing the vigil. Executive Director Jonathan Ryan says, given today's climate, it was important to put something together.
A lot of numbers, a lot of politics, and a lot of opinions. But tonight reminds us that these are lives, and that sometimes lives are lost in the simple effort of trying to reconnect with family.
Several speakers, including local and national leaders, joined the group in solidarity.
When we talk about policy and laws and immigration reform, is making sure that as Americans, we honor our own traditions, and that most fundamentally, we see immigrants as human beings.
39 immigrants, mostly from Mexico, were found inside this semi-trailer with no working AC. 8 people died inside and 2 others died after being hospitalized. Those who survived the ordeal described hellish conditions, saying they were reduced to crying and pleading for water due to the stifling heat.
These people lost their lives here in San Antonio, but they are remembered in Mexico, where they originated their journeys and where they're laid to rest forever.
And just 3 months ago, the driver of the trailer, James Bradley, was sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty last year. Phil?